Welcome, Caitlin, to Keep What You Earn. It's so great to have you.
It's good to see you. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks. So tell us a little bit about who Caitlin is and how you started this virtual CFO practice that you have and sort of what got you into accounting? Because let's be honest, people don't understand why we do what we do or why we find it interesting. So tell us about kind of how this all started for you.
Yeah, it's one of my one of my favorite stories, honestly. So I went into college pretty heck bent on going to study languages and business. I was going to go run hotels. So that was my plan, was to go travel the world and run hotels. And part of the business degree is accounting 101. So I'm in accounting 101 at a super small liberal arts college. Like, you guys have to think about this. My French class had 3 people in it. Like, you could not fall asleep in class. So my accounting class had like 20, and that was a big class at this school. So we're in accounting 101, and I'd gone to the professor for some help, and I had told her, this is really fun. And I think she just stopped dead at that point. She's like, so when are we switching your major to accounting? And before I left her office that day, we had swapped my major to accounting. I kept the French, and I was on the path that 4 years later, I had 150 credit hours and was sitting for the CPA exam. So, well, because I dared to tell my professor I thought it was fun. And it was truly. I enjoyed it. I was one of the few who enjoyed tax class. Everyone else hated it. I hated auditing class. I absolutely was like, dreaded that on the exam. Not my thing. So yeah, I ended up doing that. Got hired at Deloitte after college in their tax arm. Worked for a bunch of high net worth individuals. Really disliked the hours and the pressure and just kind of the abuse we took from clients. Like, we had clients legitimately showing up at like 5 o'clock on 4/14, and someone was assigned every year for the specific client to stay overnight to finish the return so we could file on 4/15. And this was just normal. Like, nobody questioned it. You were like, yeah, it's my year to take the hit for this. And it was really just depressing to see that that was just what we did. We never tried to train the clients to enforce anything that said, like, this is coming. Like, can we just change this? So I ended up leaving and moving into corporate, which was just kind of steadier hours, but still very old mindset. You needed to be in the office, in the chair. People were falling asleep at their desk, and that was still preferred to me having to be out with a sick kid. And so once again, I was like, well, clearly still not going to work. And I never could see myself. I don't know about you. I never could see myself in like these corner offices. I couldn't see myself in the corporate corner office. I didn't want to be partner at Deloitte. Like, nothing fit. And so when I left corporate, I was like, oh, I could just do this myself, and I could pick clients I liked, and I could work for people I wanted to work with, and I could see their success. And that's what felt really good. And the corner office didn't matter because I clearly work from my bedroom now. So it was just all about who I got to serve and how I got to serve them, and that it got to fit with my life. So that was a big, accounting to now. And now it's just been working with amazing business owners who are doing amazing things. And then I just get to be part of that team so that they can keep more, make a bigger impact, and change the world kind of one small community at a time. It's kind of my hope.
I love it. And for those of you listening, you can probably tell by now why I love Caitlin, because she's basically me. So actually, I don't know if you know this, Caitlin, but your story is almost identical to mine, except mine's Spanish. I wanted to be a Spanish teacher / international business. And I actually fell in love with Spanish. And then I took my first accounting class, luckily in high school. And I actually said, this is fun. And my dad, who was a CPA, and my teacher were like, if you don't major in this, there's something wrong. Like, you need to go major in this. And next thing you know, again, sitting for the CPA exam the Monday after I graduated. So I I definitely see a lot of my own story in yours. And that's
Oh, I love
why
that.
I think we align on so many different things, and why I'm so happy to have you here. Because today, what I want to talk about is really the role of a CFO. And I think that there's this common misconception among business owners. And for those of you who just tuned out thinking like, well, CFO is cool, but like, I don't need a CFO. I'm not ready for a CFO. I can't afford a CFO. Even if you are early stage in your business, learning about what a CFO does and the value they have for your business, or what that role really is, allows you to understand what what responsibilities you have, right, as the business owner until such time that you hire that out. So tell us, Caitlin, from your perspective, what exactly does a CFO do for a business owner?
Yeah, what I really see them at, so when you really bring in that CFO, is that they are there to merge the gap between you as the CEO and all the financial aspects of your business. So the bookkeeping, accounting, those terms are used interchangeably, the tax portion, and the compliance portion. So all of those can get so overwhelming to track them all, to maintain them all, and then to translate it. And so that's what I really love is if you're hiring a good CFO, you may have a separate bookkeeper, you may have a separate tax person, but your CFO is kind of that stopgap of like, I will gather this information, I will translate it into a way that you understand, and I will explain it to you as the CEO. Because the CEO, at the end of the day, you're making the decisions. It's just how much data, and are you going to understand that data to make those decisions? And so you, like I said, so many have hired that bookkeeper and that tax person and the CEO. They're still clueless as to what they're telling them. They're like, this just doesn't make sense, or it's not holistic. The bookkeeper's saying one thing, the tax person's saying another thing, but I don't have anyone to gather that and merge it for me. And so that's really where I see that CFO is they're being informed of everything and then getting it to that business owner so they can make the decisions for the business with a good sounding board.
Yeah, there's this term being thrown around, I think a lot in the online business space right now, which is integrator. And I see the
Uh,
CFO as a financial integrator in a
mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Yes, I like that
So
term, integrator.
yeah, I like the idea of integration. There's the COO, the CFO, and we call these, the chief officers, right? And
Yeah.
these are like titles that you expect out of a Fortune 500 company. And we associate these with prestige and elite status and, frankly, old white guys in suits. And
Yes.
what I think that people do is they associate that with really a crazy, unattainable level of financial performance. Now, what would you say to someone who's sitting here going right now, thinking, well, CFO sounds great, but that's not what I'm not ready for that, or I can't afford a CFO. What can they do for a kind of an earlier stage business owner?
Yeah, first I'll say you probably need one sooner than you think. But if you are earlier stage, then you want to look for those qualities in whomever you're hiring. So let's say you can only afford a bookkeeper right now and a tax preparer once a year. You want a bookkeeper who will teach you and will educate you and will give you information more than, hey, this was your revenue, this was your expenses, see you later, peace out, I'm gone. Like you really need that, hey, let's talk about this relationship. And not every bookkeeper is going to have it, but the ones that you hire, the ones that you work with should, to help bridge that gap until you can get to somebody else. Same with that tax person. If they're saying, here's your tax bill once a year and there's no other communication and no other help, there's so many good tax preparers out there. So again, starting to find the small pieces and having them, they're not going to fully integrate it for you. They're not going to break down your break even point on your next product launch, but they can at least give you some more knowledge so that you're not endlessly Googling and just getting frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have that sort of CFO, that financial integrator, what are some of the common misconceptions about what we do as CFOs? What would you think are some of the assumptions people make about what we do?
What I think they think we're paid an insane amount of money to sit around and look at a spreadsheet and tell you everything. That's just not the case. I think they also think we're stuffy people who can't speak in lingo that's any different than our professional lingo. We might slip up, but I'd say that a good CFO can at least speak in normal people terms.
Right.
I think those are the big ones, or that we're tax. I'd say a lot of people have the misconception that maybe that they're tax specific and that's the only thing they can talk about either. And again, a good CFO needs to know accounting and tax, at least in a way that they can speak about it with some knowledge.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So, having a CFO in your business, right? Give us some examples, maybe some client stories or
Yeah.
experiences that you've had where it really moved the needle having someone looking at all this information, right? Like what either financial pitfalls or expensive mistakes have been avoided or what opportunities have been found. Give us some client examples so the folks
Yeah.
listening understand how this could actually impact their business.
Yeah, so one of my favorite ones we're working on now. So mostly I work with service businesses, but often they'll have a product associated. And so right now we've got a product-based business that went out. We were new working together, so they hadn't quite come to trust me yet. And they went out and rented a building, rented a kitchen, and didn't talk to me about it. Well, it's not doing well. It's not profiting right now. Had they not had me, had they not had someone organizing their books and separating out their different business lines, I guarantee they would have gone years on loans and being like, we don't know what's going on. There's just some problem. We'll just keep taking loans. But because we're here, I'm here, and we're talking regularly, we caught it early after a few months of a loss. And we're starting to pivot and we're starting to make changes and we're doing the break even analysis and we're coming up with not only the numbers, but the marketing. And so that kind of, I'm not a marketing expert, but part of what I do is to be creative with your business, to help you think outside that box and to make sure that we're making this business profitable and that it'll survive. And it's all based on those owners too. It's so important that we talk about goals, because that was my first question. Is your goal that this is a short-term thing? Because if so, close shop and go. Like there's no point at this point in us banging our head. If you're telling me 10 years from now you want to own this, then let's solve this problem. Let's really dig in and figure out where we can do. And at that point, things like loans make more sense. I'm not going to tell you to go in debt to save a business just to turn around in 2 months and quit. But if you want to save this and you want this for 10 years, then we do need to make these changes. And so that's been a big part. We are onboarding a new client who has a bookkeeper and who has a tax preparer, but has not had a CFO. And she knows that she has business lines not doing well. She doesn't know what they are. And so that's going to be our role, is to come in and say, okay, these business lines aren't making you money. These ones are. That next dollar of profit, this is where we suggest you put it so that you see that return on money. Do you really love this business line that's losing money? Or do you want to cut and run and take that money and invest it elsewhere? So all of those decisions are going to be coming down the chute. And again, it just, her team wasn't talking to each other and they weren't talking to her, and no one was gathering the data to present it to her. So I'm really excited to help these businesses do these things. And these aren't multi-million dollar businesses, but they are families who are self-employed, families who are trying to do their best and make a living and sustain everyone, that it's worth it to them to make this investment so we can save them money and tax wise, but we can also create a business that's going to outlast them and leave the legacy they're desiring.
I love that. And I believe that 100%. And from our standpoint too, like, my next question is going to be, and I'll share kind of some take on this too, is what decisions do you empower business owners to make? Like what types of decisions would they turn to a CFO and talk about? And you brought up that, business owners making decisions without running it by you. And what I don't want to do is tell you that are listening that you need to ask permission as a business
Right.
owner. It is your business. It is your decision. However, there are crucial things that affect our ability to serve you and deliver value to you. If we don't know that you're making moves, that impacts our strategy, right? So if we don't know what's going on the field, how can we coach you, right? Or how do we know what the next play is going to be if we don't know what you're doing out there? So it's so important to communicate and to share that stuff proactively with your accountant, with your CFO. And I think from a decision standpoint, if you're a business owner trying to grow and scale a business, then understanding those goals, so important. And how do we help you achieve them? How can we help you by answering your questions and help you make those decisions? I think the most common questions I get from clients when it comes to decision making is, when can I hire my next person?
Mm-hmm.
And typically there's that. And then there's also ad spend is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we making money off of these ads? And then the other thing I think is the question we help answer is really around, am I profitable? But am I profitable in income streams and segments? Because
Yes.
I think that we over rely as business owners. If you guys are looking at your P&L and you're thinking, I'm profitable, that's great. Let's say you're profitable, like I'm 50K in profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you actually separate it out by revenue line, by how are you making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Caitlin knows where I'm going with this. You could end up with, well, we're actually $200,000 profitable in one. and minus 150 in the other.
150. Yep.
And
Mhm.
what makes up that 50, right? Because now it's like you could have been plus 200 if you just cut the cord on that one that's draining you money.
Mhm.
So I think there's always a layer deeper than what you see on the P&L. And that's also an element of what we do is we go a little bit deeper to understand the why behind those numbers. And so tell us about some of the decisions that you commonly help business owners face.
Yeah, definitely the owners. And even with the income streams I wanted to touch on, if it's a passion project, at least know it's a passion project losing money. Like at least have that data
Yes.
to make
Yeah.
that decision because there's no problem with that. Like
Right.
I'm never going to sit there and be like, no, you only can work profitable things. No, but I want you to know like that hour you put into that's not going to make you a profit. But if you find joy, that's important too. So it
Yes.
is that whole picture. I'd say employees are the big ones because they come not only with added payroll taxes and stuff, but they start to bring in a lot of HR issues. So I often do get a lot of HR questions and I do draw the line on what I can answer as a CFO and what I can't. But I'll be the first one to say now it's time that you hire an HR person because you have workers' comp issues and just these things we don't think about. So often we're like, okay, we need an employee. What's my FICA tax cost? And you're like, well, that's the easy one. But what's the cost to train the person? What's the cost when they turn over? What's the cost to hire another person? So all of those decisions are pretty big that we do. Pricing of launches. I really love when clients come and they're like, hey, we got this new product we're rolling out, this new service offering. We want to spend about this much in ad spend. It costs this much in hours and people. So what's our break even? Like those are the good discussions to have ahead of
Those are
time.
fun.
I never need the permission, of course. Launch what you want, but if you're doing it without even some kind of proactive conversation, then my job's always going to be reactive. And I want to be proactive with you. So the more we know, the more we can help you.
100%. And as you were describing that, I was thinking, if I'm listening to this podcast, I'm wondering, well, there's a lot of these questions that Caitlynn answers and that Shannon answers that I ask my business coach.
Mhm.
And maybe my business coach, uh, feels these questions. Why would you want to go to, a Shannon or a Caitlynn versus you have a business coach that you're asking all this to, and maybe they're giving you answers. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, that's because the business coach is going to tell you to pay yourself a six-figure salary and you're an S Corp and you lose your S Corp benefit. So I'm sorry, that sounds very pointed. No, I did. I had someone and they're like, hey, my business coach says I should really get into the mindset of a six-figure owner, which means I need to pay myself a six-figure salary. And if you guys have ever had the S corporation discussion, the point is to save some FICA taxes. Well, Social Security phases out like somewhere around $132,000. And so I'm like, well, then you're going to lose your benefit of being an S corporation if you pay yourself completely out in salary. And so we had to have that discussion and walk it back some, that her salary was set for a tax beneficial reason that was reasonable. She's still making six figures. It's just broken out differently, distributions and payroll.
Right.
So that's been one. And then the other has been to outsource. But the worst feeling as a business owner, one of the worst feelings I would think, is to hire someone and then have to turn around and fire them 2 months later because the cash flow wasn't there to support them because a business coach said you should hire someone. So you immediately acted on it and now you have to let them go. And so just having those discussions, like take those ideas from the business coach, tell your CFO that like, I'm really looking heavily at these decisions. They also have your CFO has had a discussion what your priorities might be. So let's say you told your CFO, hey, my priority is to reinvest in some equipment, to pay myself X amount of dollars because that's what we need to live on, and to expand. And then you come in and say, hey, my coach said to hire someone. Well, the CFO can walk you through, hey, we had this discussion. You said these were your financial priorities. This fits in about third or fourth. What are we moving around to make that happen? And so that's why it's so important. I love teams and I love working with teams. I love talking to the teams. But I get very scared when owners take the business coach's ideas and run without breathing and pausing on it.
Yeah. And I think if we're generalizing, right, most business coaches will, I think, there's definitely an abundance of business coaches out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And people are taking their advice out of the excitement, the joy, the the strategy. And I think that there's what Caitlynn is basically saying, if I'm paraphrasing, is, you can't operate from one lens of those
Mhm.
decisions. You always have to, maybe they have some fantastic ideas. You're getting coached by someone great, and they say, go hire someone. Well, they don't know the whole money story of your business. They don't know they're not intimately involved with the numbers the way that your CFO is. So by you just running that by the CFO and saying, hey, um, so and so says that I should be hiring someone, what would that look like? And having that open and honest conversation proactively, that is where the magic happens. That's where I see business owners really scale and grow
Mhm.
with I hate to say with ease, but it's so much simpler when they're
Yes.
proactive, and it just becomes part of the process as opposed to dealing with a lot of growing pains and, like you said, hiring and having to fire because you have to pull back on certain decisions that you make quickly. And
Mhm.
it really is kind of a long game decision making process.
Yeah, and I think that frustrates some people when the CFO is like, "Hey, we just want to take a breather real quick." And they're like, "No, no, no, we want this now. No, let's gather a little bit of data." And so I know they, oh, it's a buzzkill. But it's not that we want to be a buzzkill, it's that our
Yeah.
game is long. Our game is 10, 15, 20 years. That's where we're looking, and we want to make sure that that decision today is good 20 years from now too.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd say, like, when you bring in your taxes, it works the same way. Like, it was always one of my warnings with clients, and it still is, like, please don't go make some huge taxable transaction and tell me 2 months later. Like,
Hmm.
bring it ahead of time. And that works with your business. There's so many tax implications that if you just go and do it, we can't always undo it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think for those of you listening, let's talk about it, right? If let's say you go to your accountant with some of these things, and maybe you're thinking, wow, it'd be so cool to have a partner or a strategic advisor like that in my pocket, in my corner, to be able to ask these questions to. I'm telling you that people like that exist. You got two of them you're listening to right now, but people like that exist. And if you're thinking, wow, my accountant doesn't do any of this for me, well, here's my advice, and I'll let Caitlin chime in too. Obviously, you know, what is the scope of service you have with the financial professionals in your life? Do you have someone who does the tax paperwork for you and that's it? Do you have someone who does the bookkeeping and that's it? And that's totally fine if you do. But who is integrating all of that for you and making really enabling you to make decisions? And if you don't have necessarily that person in there, what are you doing to consume that information and take responsibility for that as a business owner? And Caitlin, what advice would you have around that?
That if you do have someone you trust that you're working with, I think it's a scope of, go ask them. Like,
Yeah.
if you really like your tax person, go ask them if they offer more. And they
Mm,
might, and they just might not have thought to ask you about it, or they thought you were happy with the relationship. Like, it is your business, and no one is going to care about it more than you. A lot of us are going to try, we're going to try to match you, but no one's going to care about it more than you. So you have to be proactive. And then, I mean, social media is huge. Finding people who think and act in a way that you want them to, reaching out to them if they're out of, for some reason, your budget. We all have networks. I mean, that's a big part of what we do, is we all network, because we know we're not the perfect solution for everyone, but in our heart of hearts, we want to help. And so we want to send you to someone who can help. And so if they're not your perfect fit, they're probably going to have someone who might be, who at least acts like them and is in their network. Because that's why Shannon and I do click. And that's why we click with so many other professionals that we mutually know, is we're all teachers and we all care and we all want to create better businesses and help people do that. So that's kind of where I would poke around at.
yeah. And pointing that out too, we're no different than you as a small business owner. Caitlin and I are both small business owners ourselves, trying to figure it out as we go, right? For our own businesses. We do our own bookkeeping. Like we have, our own struggles, our own challenges, and our own strategies that we're learning, right? We're growing. We we've been there, done that on a few things, and we're also learning as we go too, and that's the fun of it, is that we're right there
Yeah.
along with you for the ride sometimes, and
Mhm.
applying it to our own businesses. And just for fun, Caitlin, to kind of bring it home for everybody here on the fact that we are small business owners. We're not here lecturing you on what to do with your numbers by any stretch. We're trying to give the best advice we can to help you avoid any problems. But tell me, and this kind of put you on the spot here, but tell me, what are some of the challenges or big mistakes you've made as a business owner It doesn't have to be financial, but let's just share some of our own bloopers for everyone to know that we are
Oh,
human and we make
right.
mistakes.
Oh gosh, pricing's always my big one. So I always typically underprice. And not even like the blooper, but like that my husband is better at it than I am. And he's nowhere close to the like small business world. Like he walked out of our house yesterday and he's like, you ask for what you deserve and nothing less, and left the house. And I was like, well, then you come do the call with me. Like this isn't easy. This isn't great. And then honestly, I had sent out a proposal. I was in a rush for Labor Day and I'd sent out a proposal to a prospective client with typos in it, which I never do. Like I am the nitpickiest person, but it was just one of those days of real life, real junk going on and just trying to get the to-dos done. And I did end up losing it. And I don't blame them one bit. It hurt and it stung, but it was me. It was all something that just happens with being a small business human, that these things happen. And it's part of the learning curve. The next one went a lot better. I built in extra time. I didn't try to do it before a long weekend where we're trying to get out the door as a family for vacation, like all sorts of things you just figure out as you go. And there'll be more bumps along the way. As long as they're not with the IRS, I'm happy. So I just try to keep away from those ones.
Absolutely. So if I had to give a couple of my, like what's on
Yes, I
Shannon's
want to
blooper,
hear.
what's on Shannon's blooper reel? I would say, along with pricing, which you touched on, I think we all struggle with that sometimes. I would say holding on to clients longer than I should,
Mm-hmm.
like being in a relationship longer than you should, right? When you go, why didn't I break up with them like 3 months earlier? Like why,
Right.
and I think we can all relate to
So
that
easy.
as for anyone's clients. There's always a few clients that you stick with longer than you should. And then I would also say, let's see, client relationships. And then I would probably also say, I would say pricing, and I've gotten a lot better at communicating expectations. So I used to over deliver a lot. And
Yep.
I think now it's much more boundaries around scope of work and around time. So
Mm-hmm.
not responding at midnight to emails, and not, even though it's like on your phone and it's kind of easy to clear out that inbox.
Delay it.
I
Set that
know.
delay, Shannon.
I know. I'm admittedly, and any of you who are clients who are listening are like, yeah, I've received more than one middle of the night email from Shannon. I am one of those people who like hates having the little number next to my inbox of new emails. Like I consider a
Yeah,
successful day a cleared out inbox.
it's cleared.
Right. And Enneagram 3 type A all the way. And I just can't, I'm working on that. I'm a recovering, I'm a
I can't
recovering
judge. I send them,
perfectionist.
I get up at 5 a.m. So I'm an early
Yes.
bird. I don't stay up late, but I'm up early. And so there's been a few that have hit client inboxes at like 4:45, 5 a.m. And I'm like, shoot, I was supposed to delay that till 8. So they didn't know that I was up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. And luckily I don't think anyone pays too much attention to the timestamps, but I would say those are some of my big bloopers that I've experienced as a business owner. And I think you learn a lot about yourself as a business owner when two things: when you make these mistakes and you start seeing them affect you back. So if
Mhm.
people are abusing your boundaries, it's because you're not setting them. Well, why? Because maybe you're a little bit of a people pleaser. And conversely, like if you look at your numbers, this is the other thing, tying it back to CFO, right? We as financial experts, financial professionals, we know a lot about someone based on how they spend their money. And you start understanding people's priorities, and you
Mhm.
work around that, and you understand more about them as business owners, them as people, in how they spend their money, just like how they spend their time. And at least my role as a CFO has been more than the money. We talk about business strategy, we talk about launching, we talk about family, we talk about future planning a lot. And it doesn't just extend to the balance sheet and the income statement. We are full blown talking like future planning, strategies, and long-term goals here. And I think that's what a lot of the value is.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm in so big of like the online world and the coaching world and the mentoring world, I think the further I get, I'm like, gosh, it's financials plus a heck of a lot of coaching. Like that's just what we do because there's so much money mindset going on.
Mm-hmm.
How you grew up with money is going to affect how you spend it. So you have the clients who were always secure, and so they spend pretty easily. You have the clients who had moments of insecurity, and so they hold on to cash really, really tight. And so to have that discussion of like, this really does serve you long-term to investment, like there's just that piece of it. I know for sure that it's never transactional. And that's what I like to say. Like for me and my clients, I always want that relationship to be transformational, that you come out better after we're done working together than when you came in. Ideally, we're together a long time, but that you've learned a lot, that you're better for the next person you have to hire, that you know what you're looking for, and that you just feel secure in where you are. So that's a big part. Is I think transactional probably is the accountant, probably is that once a year tax preparer. The CFO is there for the transformation in both the business and the person.
Love that. Love it. So let's say someone says, I'm ready for that transformation. I'm ready to, find that financial integration to hire that CFO. What makes a good CFO client?
Yeah, we want you to be responsive. So that's a big one for me. I don't want you to like sit on my emails or my boxers for like 3 weeks, because it just slows down the whole process. And I want you to be, I guess coachable would be a good word to use, but that when we provide you advice, that you take it. And when we say, hey, in order to implement XYZ, this is what you need to do, and you take it and run. And if it's not you, that there's someone on your team that you've delegated that responsibility for. I don't have to work necessarily always with the CEO. If your VA or your partner or something is the one who's going to reclass some credit cards for me and it's going to move some bank accounts around, like then put me in touch with that person. Like I'm here to help the whole business. So those are the 2 big ones, and that you are going to trust me. Like that trust needs to be there. I know it takes time to build up, but definitely don't hire me if you're not going to trust me, because then you're just kind of capping me at my knees. I can't do the best job for you if you're not going to trust me. Like I'm going to trust you.
Yeah. And going back to that advice, I don't want anyone to assume that, you must take our advice means be blindly obedient.
Yeah.
It means
Ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions. We love that. We actually love when people ask questions. I think that's inquisitive is one of mine,
Yes.
because I want to know that you're not going to blindly take my advice. Because if I say jump and you just jump, it's like, do you know why I told you told you that?
Be engaged in the process, be
For
inquisitive
sure.
and engaged in this process, because it's your business. Like I walk away at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with it.
Yeah. And I would say to the business owner who if you're listening to this podcast, I assume that you have at least somewhat of a curiosity to learn a little bit more about how to manage your
Sure.
money as a business owner. But let's say someone who's listening is like, I don't want to touch the numbers at all. I want nothing to do with it. I don't even want to look at a number. I don't want to deal with it. I'll tell you right now, that's not my ideal client. But for someone who's like that, what advice would you have for them in terms of what they should do in their business?
Honestly, I think if you absolutely don't want to touch it, there's a past trauma reason why you don't want to touch it. There's a reason you are putting your head in the sand. And so I honestly think we're talking therapy, like not in a bad way. I go to therapy. I love therapy, but like,
well, we have to attack a different.
I don't think the problem is the number. I don't think that you're not a numbers person. I think you're assigning emotion and trauma to those numbers, and you have to break through that. And if that's the case, until you can break through that, until you can get to where you can engage in those numbers in a safe manner where you feel okay, you need to have your team built out with trusted professionals. You need to do things like, who is doing your bookkeeping is not doing your accounts payable for you. I want to make sure, like, if you're going to completely pull yourself out, then those like internal controls, those checks and balances are fully implemented so you can take care of yourself and then step back in.
I love that. That's so true. Yeah. I was going to say something to exactly what you said, but making sure you have that team of trusted professionals, because it has to get done by someone, whether it's you or not.
Yeah. Like there is a compliance piece. The IRS is going to make you do it. There's nothing we can do about that. So just make sure you have that team that you implicitly trust at that point. So you can just take care of you.
Yeah. And as I always say, you've heard me say it before, you have a right to choose who you want to hire. You have a right to choose who you work with, especially in the age of the internet, Instagram, and this network of people that we have, which is amazing that we can connect on this level. Caitlynn and I met basically via Instagram. And it's been wonderful to get to know other professionals, but also to find service providers that I know, like, and trust through social media. And I think it's a wonderful tool for that. So don't discount it. You can find some great people that you will love working with using those types of forums. And speaking of that, so Caitlynn, tell us, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, they're interested in learning more about working with you, or what offers you have for someone who maybe they're still thinking, not ready for full-blown CFO. What do you offer our small business owners out there?
Yeah, so best place that I interact the most, Instagram, Caitlynn Eldridge, is where you can find me there. My program, my flagship that I absolutely adore, is my CPA Hour. And it is a group membership program for new and small growing businesses, where we meet twice a month on a Zoom call. The goal is that you bring your bookkeeping to do. So you're still in a do it myself mode, but you have questions, and a lot of them. You come, you do your bookkeeping, and you get those questions answered right away. A big problem I was seeing is that business owners would go and sit down to do their bookkeeping, hit a wall because they had a couple of questions, but they didn't really have a relationship with their tax person to ask that. And they're not going to go pay $300 an hour for like a dedicated hour. And then they don't finish their bookkeeping. And then it becomes January and they're just stressed and frustrated. So the point is to keep you up on it, do it monthly, but to educate you as you go of things to look for. Some of my higher clients, my CFO clients, have come from just bad bookkeepers, unfortunately. And had they had some education of what they should be looking for along the way, I think they would have caught those problems sooner. And so I really want to send these new business owners out into the world with knowledge. And so it's really to fill that gap, that you're not ready to hire someone monthly, and then you are like, you're still starting, you need to do something. And so that's what our CPA Hour is for. All of that's on Instagram, my website. You can find us. We meet like the second Tuesday of the month and the third Thursday, so that you have bank statements. That was part of it, so that you could come and get something done in an hour. We've had people catch up like 6 months of books in an hour, and then they get to just keep growing and asking questions. And because I'm still a tax nerd at heart, we talk about taxes all the time too.
I love that. And you can find, listeners, you can find all that information in the show notes, all of Caitlynn's links to learn more about her. Follow her on Instagram. She's got great tips on there. So Caitlynn, I'd love to wrap up every guest interview with 3 rapid fire questions that I did not tell you about beforehand. And as a fellow, probably type A person, you're thinking, oh no, what? I have to be ready to think on the fly. But I love these questions because, as my listeners know, these are somewhat revealing about all my guests, but I just love the themes that are coming up when we talk about them. So number 1, what is one investment that you currently can't live without?
One investment. Gosh, it's my Kindle. I can't live without my Kindle. Like, it's a small investment. I know it's not a big one, but I read a lot. And with my kids, I have 4 of them. A real book is not okay. Like, it gets torn up and it gets written on. And so my Kindle's the only thing that like I can bring up and read without them. Because my phone's also interesting to them. Like, they want to take that and run. But the Kindle, they're like, it's black and white, Mom. What's the fun in this?
And what's so funny is, now that you say that, I don't think anyone has said their phone, which I'm actually proud of.
I was like, the next one might be the phone, but the Kindle, the ability to
Kindle
read
is a big one. Yeah. Second thing, what is one thing you learned about money that turned out not to be true?
That income equals cash flow. And it was probably a young thing, but as you got into businesses, I don't know, for some reason I was like, oh, that is their income, so that's in their bank account. And so often it's not. And you're like, right, because there's things you spend money on that you can't deduct and all these other things. But I think it was just one of those things that like I just always equated until I learned more about accounting, that the net income must be the cash in the bank. That's not the case.
Interesting. What, for anyone listening who just went, wait a minute, it's not. So if you make let's go back to, if I had a whiteboard, I would whip it out right now. If we go back to school for a second, you're telling me that if I make $500,000 in revenue, I spend 400 and I have $100,000 profit. You're telling me that I don't have $100,000 in the bank as a result of this year. Why?
Yeah, not always. I mean, if you never did anything else, you would.
Let's say I don't, like, why wouldn't I? right?
Yeah. So loan payments are a big one. We don't deduct loan payments. So for any reason you have a loan, you paid that cash out because your bank said like, pay me for that car loan. But you don't deduct it on your profit and loss. Most often you took the money out for yourself. That's not a deduct. And that's the big one. Like you took the
Yeah.
money out to go to live. So like you can tell me you live on $100,000 a year. I'll assume you probably made 100,000 net income, but it doesn't work the other way, if that makes sense. So if the business owner is sole proprietorship and they're like, okay, I take home $100,000 a year, I'll assume your net income is close to that. But if you tell me your net income's 100,000, I no longer assume your cash bank is that, because you had to take something to live on. You had to go pay the rent and the utilities and the mortgage. Like it's not sitting in your bank anymore. Put it in your savings account.
Right. So for business owners out there listening who go, wow, I just learned that my profit is not something that has to appear in my bank account necessarily, or they're not necessarily one and the same thing. That's about thousands of dollars in tax savings. If you can understand that that's the case
Paid
and
my
how,
taxes. Yeah.
right. And how taxes work around that, which we'll cover more later, I'm sure. So, Caitlynn, my last question is, what makes you feel like a millionaire?
Buying the new Apple product, which I did today. So I'm sure you guys will listen to this later. I'm like waiting for my new phone to show up, not because my phone is broken, not because there's anything wrong with it. It's barely a year old and I will be trading it in for new one. Like there is just something about having the new Apple technology that just makes me feel like I'm rich. I don't know why.
I love that because I can relate. And like, I wouldn't have come up with that, but I'm going, yeah, I think if I had an iPhone 13 in the mail, that would make me feel pretty cool.
My husband, he rolled his eyes hard when I told him he's the one who will let the phone die. Like the phone will die before he gets a new one. And I'm like, but it's new. And he's like, what's new? Like nothing really, but it's got a new number on it. He gives it to me. He believes in artwork. So he decorates our house in like themed artwork. And that's what makes him, I'm pretty sure, feel like a millionaire. And for me, I'm like, no, just give me the new phone. It's a little space.
We'll decorate the wallpaper of the phone with the artwork.
Exactly.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Caitlynn, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm so glad that everyone listening got to kind of sit in on this conversation. And for all of you listening, please give Caitlynn a follow and tag both of us on Instagram at Caitlynn Eldridge and at Shannon K. Weinstein with your biggest takeaway from today's episode, anything you learned or just enjoyed listening to. We always love hearing what impact any of this makes on you and your business and how we're helping you keep more of what you earn, which is our goal always. So with that, Caitlynn, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and hopefully we'll be seeing you soon.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Bye everyone. See you next episode.
Bye.